Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
On the show today, Overdrive, you're watching the show with me, Soini Dutt. Let's start the show with some crazy two-wheel action. Now, the middleweight naked sports bike category has become very popular over the past few years, and there are a lot of manufacturers who are getting into the game and introducing some very interesting products. The latest one to enter the market has been MV Agusta with the Brutale 800, and here's Abhay telling you more about that bike.
MV Agusta is hugely popular for its super premium high-performance motorcycles across the world. And it's now almost 2 years since the Italian brand entered the Indian two-wheeler market, partnering with Pune-based Kinetic Group's Moto Royale. The brand has just entered the hugely popular middleweight naked space with the Brutale 800. The motorcycle, they say, promises an experience unlike any other bike in its segment. But can it live up to the legacy that MV Agusta is known for? Let's find out.
Drop dead gorgeous. That's what the Brutale 800 is, especially in this fetching shade of red. It looks stunning, and in terms of the design, the Brutale certainly delivers the exoticness you expect of an MV Agusta. And its beauty aside, what really impressed me was how compact the bike is. In fact, in terms of visual appearance, it isn't much larger than a KTM 390 Duke, which is remarkable. The face looks aggressive as you'd expect of a sport naked. The headlight looks eye-catching with its LED daytime running lamps, while the wide fuel tank looks smart with its air intakes. The rear end looks equally arresting, if not better, particularly thanks to the sleek design of the subframe and the hole in it under the rider's seat. The single-sided swing arm and triple exhaust finished in gold add to the gorgeousness, but my favorite here is the rear number plate hanger. Its intricate design has it come literally from inside the rear wheel, and I have no doubts in saying this is a work of art.
Powering the Brutale 800 is MV Agusta's 800cc triple-cylinder engine that makes about 110 PS of power. Now that number might sound similar to other middleweight nakeds, but what separates the Brutale is the brutal power delivery. With most of the torque available from just 4000 RPM, this motorcycle is scarily quick. In fact, there's so much power low down, I had trouble keeping the front wheel down in the first 2 gears.
Unintentional wheelies are a given on the Brutale unless you dial off the traction control. The system works well in reining the horses in, and you get 8 levels of traction to choose from, apart from 4 riding modes including Sport, Normal, Custom and Rain. Despite the electronics, the Brutale clearly is not a motorcycle for everyone with its fierce power delivery. This is a motorcycle that's best in the hands of experienced riders, especially since it clocked 0 to 100 km per hour in just 3.9 seconds in our test. Another highlight of the engine is its refinement and the precise fueling. While we're at it, the brilliant soundtrack deserves a mention too. After all, part of the experience is the sporty triple-cylinder exhaust note. The engine comes mated to a 6-speed gearbox that gets a bi-directional quick shifter. This makes gear changes extremely quick and easy without using the clutch, be it for shifting up or down.
The Brutale 800 lives up to the expectation of being an MV Agusta with its handling too. It is easily the sharpest handler as far as middleweight nakeds go, and clearly this motorcycle benefits a lot from MV's legacy of making some of the best handling motorcycles in the world.
The Brutale's sharp steering geometry makes it extremely quick in terms of handling, be it weaving through traffic or carving corners in the hills. The suspension and chassis ensure the bike feels planted, whether you're fully leaned in around corners or blasting off on open roads. There's a light, nimble feel at all times, and the Brutale 800 should be great fun on a racetrack too. Credit for the brilliant handling also goes to the Pirelli Diablo Rosso 3 tires that offer lots of grip at all times.
But all that handling prowess comes at the expense of ride quality. The Brutale 800 suspension is really stiff, which makes it very uncomfortable on bad roads. The suspension causes you to literally feel every single bump on the road, which is not a pleasant experience. What makes it worse is the fact that the seat could have done with some more padding.
The suspension setup is the same as what is offered internationally, and we would have liked a slightly softer setup for our conditions. What's more, the seat could have done with some more cushioning, as it feels good enough for short rides only and will have you feel uncomfortable over longer periods of time.
I have no doubts in saying the Brutale 800 is easily the sharpest and fiercest middleweight naked in the country right now. but priced at over rupees 15 lakh ex-showroom, it is really expensive. It clearly is a motorcycle for the well-heeled enthusiast who has been riding fast motorcycles for a very long time. So if you are passionate about motorcycles and do not mind a price tag being put to them, the Brutale 800 is a machine that should be a part of your garage.
Joined us on our Auto Selector segment here on the show with our overdrive expert, Shubha Brother Marmar. Shumi, as we all know him. Hi Shumi, our first question this week comes in from Kshitij Gupta. He writes in from Dehradun saying that he wants to buy a scooter and has got the Vespa on his mind, but he's heard that the new fuel injection model will be arriving soon. So what do you suggest? Should he wait for that model? Any update on when that will be launched in the country?
I would tell you that if you're in the mood for a Vespa, just hold off till about April. When the ABS law comes into place, all the two-wheelers are supposed to become more expensive. That's usually a logical point for a manufacturer to make a big change to their product, like introduce fuel injection, for example. But technically, given the fact that the emission norms are still at least 2.5 years away, there is no real reason for them to add fuel injection. So if it is going to happen, to me, it will happen by April. Just wait for that. If it doesn't happen, you can make an informed decision about buying the current Vespa or waiting for a new one.
Well, the next question, Shumi, this week comes in from Abhishek Bal. He writes in saying he owns a Bajaj Pulsar RS200 which has been running on stock tires, but now he wants to upgrade his tires. He has shortlisted the Pirelli Diablo Rosso 2 or the Metzeler's M5 or the Michelin tires. Good grip in wet conditions and good cornering capability is what he stresses on. He wants to know which tire should he opt for, and if he upgrades to a 150 profile on the stock rim, would that lead to any disadvantages? What would you suggest, Shumi?
Abhishek, what I would tell you first is that upgrading the tires is an excellent choice to make for a motorcycle. It will completely transform your experience. I will also tell you that Bajaj's Pulsar RS200 is actually very well balanced on the MRFs it gets. So, do you really need to upgrade the tire? I'll come to that. Out of the 3 tires you've shortlisted, the Metzeler M5 is a tire we're very familiar with, and that's the tire I would recommend to you. Get the H-rated one, which is the cheaper model, which has a lower speed rating. Since the RS200 isn't as fast as a KTM 390 or something, you don't really need the higher rated tire. When you switch to a 150 section, the Metzeler should be okay because it's a very aggressive profile, so it will cause your motorcycle to fall to lean angle much quicker than you're used to on the MRFs. But apart from that, you'll feel a little bit of slowness in the way it steers. Your fuel efficiency will drop a little bit, but that's the change. You have to choose whether that's okay with you or not. But I will tell you this, before you invest in a better tire, given how good the RS200 generally is in terms of handling, maybe invest in a riding school or something and improve your skills first, because first we need to be able to get everything we can from the tires we have before we upgrade to the tires that give us more.
Well, our next question this week comes in from Buddywell. He writes in from Chennai saying he is planning to upgrade from his Volkswagen Vento to either an SUV or a sedan. He's kept aside a budget of 30 lakh rupees for this particular buy. His yearly commute is 25,000 kilometers. He says 18,000 kilometers in the city and 7,000 kilometers on the highway. Knowing this, would you suggest a petrol or a diesel car? Also, he's contemplating between the Ford Endeavour, Skoda Octavia, the Superb or the Volkswagen Passat. Of course, safety and driving pleasure are of utmost importance to him.
Buddywell, you clearly have a lot on your mind, and I would suggest that at the bottom of your range what you've selected is the Octavia, and it's a good selection. It's a proven car, it's been around for a while, it's got the safety equipment that you want, it drives like a driver's car. The new RS has come out if that suits your fancy. But you're thinking about an SUV, so what I would say is consider buying the Tiguan. Go for a test ride and see what that's like. It drives like a car, it is an SUV, has off-road ability, it's good to drive, and in terms of budget, I think it's just about 3 lakh rupees more than the Endeavour that you've shortlisted, so it should still be within your budget.
Well, thanks so much for the suggestion, Shumi. Just like the others, if you guys have any more queries, please send them to us on helpdesk@overdrive.co.in. That is our email address. You can also Facebook or tweet us your queries and we will answer them for you on the show. It has been a very busy week in terms of launches, so without any further ado, let's check them out. The Piaggio Group has launched the new Vespa Red in India at 87,000 rupees ex-Maharashtra. This special edition Vespa has been launched in association with RED, an organization that engages businesses and people to create awareness about HIV and AIDS. The Vespa Red you see here is essentially a Vespa 125 VXL that has been given this special paint treatment. Besides the bodywork, the alloy wheels and the seat is also finished in this lovely scarlet color. This new Vespa Red is now available at all Piaggio motorplexes as well as Vespa showrooms across India. Škoda has launched its premium SUV, the Kodiaq, in India at 34.49 lakh rupees, and this 7-seater SUV is based on the familiar MQB platform that also underpins the Audi Q7 as well as the Porsche Cayenne. The Škoda Kodiaq runs a 2-litre diesel engine that makes 150 PS of power and 340 Nm of torque and is paired to a 7-speed DSG gearbox. Škoda also offers an all-wheel drive Haldex system with the new Kodiaq. The Škoda Kodiaq also gets Eco, Sport, Individual and Snow modes apart from the normal and Eco, which alter the steering, engine and air conditioning response depending on the mode selected. The steering of the Škoda Kodiaq is well weighted, and this should be favourable for those looking for a spacious SUV that's nice to drive and comfortable enough to be driven around in too. Deliveries of the Kodiaq will start from the first week of November.
In a market that is constantly flocking towards SUVs, zeroing down on a smart crossover has its pros and cons. Case in point, the Maruti Suzuki SCross, which has just undergone a facelift, and Rohit will tell you more about this car.
In the booming SUV market of India, Maruti Suzuki has literally cracked the code for the compact crossover segment with the Vitara Brezza. But at the slightly higher end of things, where the car, the S-Cross that gave birth to its premium Nexa initiative, things haven't quite been the blockbuster that Maruti Suzuki would have expected it to be. Nevertheless, they're breathing some fresh life into this car and hoping that it will change the fortunes of the S-Cross. Let's take a look. The changes to the S-Cross are primarily cosmetic, and they are evident the moment you look at the car's new face. Suzuki's focus was to make the crossover appear more aggressive and sportier than the model that it replaces. So while the cascading waterfall inspiration for the face seen on the outgoing S-Cross gave it a low-slung stance, the new one goes up for a nose-up stance instead to appear more SUV-ish. The new bonnet and the upright grille with its vertical slats contribute to that effect. The headlights get a more detailed design which makes them appear sleeker than the outgoing design. They also sport a new chunkier design for the daytime running lamps. The side profile remains largely unchanged, save for the new design for the alloy wheels. These are now shod with wider 215 section tyres compared to a 205s on the outgoing car. The signature colour also sees a change as the brown now makes way for a dark shade of blue. The latter looks a tad bit more sophisticated and highlights the chrome and the satin accents quite well. The revisions to the tail and the new detailing of the tail lights take an eagle eye to notice though. Not much has changed inside in terms of space or design. The cabin continues to look simple, European and well put together. The touch points are now done up in soft plastics. Inclusion of rear AC vents would have been a welcome change. The infotainment now gets Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility. ISOFIX points for mounting child seats, anti-lock brakes and driver and front passenger airbags are now standard across the range. The instrumentation will now remind you of the change under the hood with a graphic that says hybrid. A moment of silence, because the old 1.6-litre engine from the outgoing S-Cross is no more. What you get is the 1.3 only. Of course, that was the more popular engine out of the two, and that is why Maruti Suzuki has decided to retain the engine in the facelift of the S-Cross, but the 1.6 is out. The 1.3, however, slight bit of a change. It now gets the mild hybrid technology, or SHIVs as most people at Overdrive like to call it, or SHVS. It also gets you the start-stop system, and that, according to me, is a little annoying in the city traffic where it just keeps going on and off every now and then. But it's a nice technology to have because it brings along some valuable fuel savings, especially if you're going to be driving in bumper-to-bumper traffic in the metro cities every day. We have already seen this tech in the Ciaz and the Ertiga, and Maruti Suzuki claims a 7% gain in fuel savings for the new S-Cross. The mild hybrid setup includes a start-stop system, regenerative braking, and an electric motor which assists the car while moving from a standstill. Though not as powerful as the 1.6 on specs, the 1.3 diesel is quite a punchy motor and comes mated to a precise 5-speed gearbox. Moreover, it doesn't have the torque steer either. Between the 1.6 and the 1.3, the 1.3 always had a slightly lighter steering setup, and that continues with this car as well. What I do like is, unlike some of the newer power steering systems from Maruti Suzuki or from the rivals of this car, this one doesn't feel as lifeless. Of course, it's not as precise or not as communicative as some of the older steering systems from Maruti Suzuki. I'm talking about the older Swift. But this one is not as bad as something that we had in the Baleno or something from, say, the Ignis. This one still feels slightly better, which is a positive sign. The ride quality on the S-Cross was always one of its trump cards, and it continues to do so with the facelift as well. No real changes to it. However, for some reason I feel that the suspension setup on this particular car is a little bit noisier than what I remember of the earlier S-Cross that we had as a long-termer. That was the 1.6 variant, of course, but even the 1.3 that we drove earlier seemed to have a slightly silent suspension setup. This one seems a little noisier to me. But bump absorption is very good. The ride is slightly on the firmer side, and that also gives it some really good driving dynamics around the bends. But overall, I think it's a nice suspension setup. It rides really well, and it's not something that you will complain about even on some of the worst possible Indian roads that this car will encounter. The fatter rubber on the S-Cross also seems grippier and less noisy than the outgoing car. The understeer, due to the lack of grip, has reduced significantly. The new tyres complement the steering quite well too and make it a fun driver over the outgoing model. Overall then, the S-Cross remains a sensible car, but now irons out two concerns that we had with it: the understeery nature and the overtly simple design. If you compare the S-Cross to the other compact SUVs around it, it's always lost out because it's never had that butch, menacing stance that you expect from an SUV. But for someone who wants a classic crossover, in that sense, you want something that is better equipped than hatchbacks or sedans to take on the broken roads, but at the same time you want a car that gives you a car-like feel to drive, not really that race stance that an SUV offers, then the S-Cross ticks all the right boxes. It is the classic definition of what a crossover is. At the same time, it is spacious, it's got a frugal engine, and it rides quite well. And as a package, now it has become better than the car that it replaces.
Now this new S-Cross of course comes with a lot of changes, upgrades and a marginal increment in terms of pricing, which is a positive note. We will have to wait a couple of months to see just how well this car picks up in the market. Time then for us to wrap up this week's edition of Overdrive, but do send us your feedback, comments and suggestions, and keep in touch with us through Facebook as well as Twitter. Follow our latest videos on our YouTube channel. We'll see you next week. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching.